would be excused for assuming that I'll be, after an introduction like this, you'll be excused for assuming that I'll be speaking about NFTs and digital collectibles and things, because that's what my startup does. We turn NFTs into boring, everyday business tools. But no. Instead, I thought I'd do a little social experiment today, which I figured might be a little more interesting and a whole lot more useful. Is that okay? You good? Good with that? Good. I'd like to start with this provocative statement that in the future, the real, the authentic, and the human will be more valuable. Do we agree? Do we agree that stuff made by people, is somewhat inherently more valuable than stuff made by machines? I know it's a sweeping statement, but give me some leeway. I only have 20 minutes here. I need some shortcuts. I think that statement is actually incorrect, and it's incorrect for a very simple reason. The simple reason is the stuff made by humans and the real and the authentic already has high value. The only thing that is likely to happen in the future is that this value will increase, probably exponentially, as most commonplace things get commoditized. Kasha's going, yay. My oldest friend in the world is an Australian photographer by the name of Emmanuel Santos. Back in the day, when we were both young fellas, just starting out in Melbourne, I went into commercial and editorial photography, and Emmanuel decided to stick to photographing subjects of his own choosing and to make a living from the sale of prints and portfolios. Now, 40 years later, fast forward, in the last 20 years, I've reinvented myself professionally 4 times. And I haven't shot any commercial work in 10, as the digital revolution cut a broad swathe through my business, changed it to a point of being unviable for many professionals. Meanwhile, Emmanuel keeps creating beautiful analog works and keeps selling prints and portfolios to collectors in Australia, in Europe, in the States, in Asia. What does that tell you? My industry, as we well know, my industry, the generally broadly known creative industry, has been through a massive change. We all know this. But the only thing that actually is happening now is that it's the next stage of this process. And I think we can all agree that the next stage of transformation is when human creativity, aided by powerful technology, will actually redefine the meaning of the word itself. It will stretch the meaning of the word creativity and pull it in ways we actually haven't thought of, let alone encountered. And of course, dystopia, the thing we're all afraid of, has many potential forms, but it has one common denominator. If we fail to look after the human, we get dehumanized by the process, by default. So I'm here to talk about the all-important human connections and how they are valuable to us individually and on a community level, and the role of artists in all of this excitement, and how keeping things authentic and real and human will be good for business. May I ask for your assistance? Please, what we're going to do is we're going to pass this from human to human. You need to keep passing it while hanging on to it. Can you manage this? This is simple enough instructions. Slowly, no hurry, and no particular order. So, like, whoever wants to get hold of it, please do. We love analog things. Sales of vinyl have been growing steadily over the last decade, and not just to nostalgic boomers like me. Slowly, no hurry, no hurry. Sales of things made in someone's workshop using their hands and a set of tools, handicrafts and objects made by professional craftspeople, they're doing very well indeed in the real world. And online, Etsy is clocking 100 million active buyers. Handmade furniture, fashion, jewelry, these are all prized possessions. And of course, anything can be made a cheaper copy. But I love my handmade Damascene steel chef's knives, and I wouldn't trade them for anything. Are you nearly at the end? Yeah. Good. Hang on to the bitter end. I'm actually convinced that within a few short years, we're going to have a labeling system in place. We're going to have a labeling system for objects and experiences that are made by humans, as opposed to those that are not. A labeling system that will prove the human-made provenance of these objects and experiences, and thus demonstrate their higher value. Why? Now that itself is a fascinating question. Why would we prefer one object over another if both fulfill the same function and both look more or less the same, but one was made by people and the other not? Connection and emotion, precisely that's what's about. And as I will say maybe once or twice today, there is plenty of research that indicates clearly that we love the connection, the emotional connection that we feel with the makers of a thing that's made with love, care, and attention. Well, that's surprises. Let's talk about surprising connections. Let's talk about surprising ideas. Let's talk about the nature of what is surprising. Where are you, my friend? Don't be shy. We love surprise. Surprise, which is a good thing to know in our world, is a major building block of everything we take in under the general umbrella of innovation and creativity. Now, does anybody disagree with this? If you do, please leave the room right now. New ideas come from recombinations of existing ideas. Much like when a musician walks on stage and improvises a tune, he has the same notes available to him as everybody else. The intervals, the arpeggios, the pauses. It's a vocabulary. All he has to do to create a new tune is arrange them in a new order. Of course, that only sounds simple. Incidentally, we have more or less the same number of thoughts every day, and more or less they're the same thoughts day in, day out. Not ideal if what we're trying to do is come up with a steady flow of new ideas. I work with a neuroscientist on one of my projects, and she tells me that there is ample research that demonstrates elegantly that new ideas come from recombinations of existing ideas in ways we hadn't thought of before. What works really well is random input. Random input can come in many forms. For instance, random words. These are a really useful thinking tool, right? All you have to do is generate a stack of random words and use them as you are ideating, as you're working. I carry mine in an old Glenfiddich tube. What can I say? Similarly, random conversations with strangers are another really valuable thinking tool. So here's a thought. When was the last time you talked, really talked, to someone from outside of your own bubble, right? Outside of your own bubble. Not conference chit-chat, not business networking. These are simple, right? But really try to get under the skin of the other human and see how you might be able to help each other in ways that you actually hadn't thought of, in ways that are not obvious. Because staying in our bubbles, of course, it has an air of comfort and familiarity. But comfort and familiarity in this moment in time are not qualities that we can afford anymore. Comfort and familiarity lead to a narrowing of horizons. And it's a problem because we actually want an expansion of horizons. Did Columbus set out over the horizon because he wanted to stay comfortable? I suggest not. Actually, he set out over the horizon because he wanted to get rich. But that's a different story. So here's our experiment. No, it's okay. Relax. You don't have to do anything just yet. You've been passing this rope around. Please hang on to it. Don't let go. We're not going to tie up everyone in knots. Relax. I'll tell you what it's about when we're done, okay? As you can probably start to imagine, it's about connecting with other people. And there's a category of human that considers connecting with other people as fuel. They connect and get inspired by other people in order to see things differently. This category of human, of course, is artists. And artists have a lot more to give than just their art. Artists operate on different frequencies and according to different rules, sometimes stereotypically. But they do, right? Of course they do. We know this. Now, it just so happens that business has been waking up to the fact that creativity is a good and important thing, and generally staff ought to have more of it. Now, as well-meaning as they are, all these articles actually are missing the main bloody point, because creativity is not a skill. If somebody tells you creativity is a skill, I don't know, slap them. Creativity is the soil from which skills grow. It's the fuel. It's the approach. It's the mindset. It's not a skill. Drawing is a skill. Playing the alto is a skill, right? But be that as it may. Well-meaning articles. So what do? Well, usually what happens is they get in me, or someone like me, to run a creative thinking workshop. Which is actually well and good, because the people enjoy the new mental connections they make on the inside. They enjoy the physical community connections they make on the outside. They have fun. I get paid. But what usually happens in short order is it turns out that this kind of short-term engagement doesn't really move the creativity needle of people very much at all long term. So what do? They run another creative thinking workshop the next year, once the L&D cycle has come around. This happens not because the people who run these companies are dumb. This happens because they keep functioning according to a script. Soft skill training in February, hard skills through the spring, and a nice creative thinking workshop just before the summer holidays. Dare I say, none of this makes sense anymore in today's world. Acting according to scripts set up years ago by well-meaning HR directors and carried out conscientiously ever since doesn't make sense. Creative thinking of people doesn't need another creative thinking workshop. It needs a makeover for dramatically different results. Now, who on this blue planet are the people from whom we can learn about such change and about the courage required for such change? Because makeovers require courage. Because makeovers don't say, oh, we'll just do another creative thinking workshop, because that's what fits into the annual program. Dare I suggest that the annual program needs changing? And who are the people from whom we can learn about such change? Artists. By accessing the raw imagination power of artists, we are able to, not yet, he ain't done just yet. We're able to envisage aspects of business and of life that escape traditional analysis. The mental process required to imagine ahead, see how the dominoes fall, assess situations and run options and come up with solutions on the fly. That's daily work for creative professionals, really, regardless of their specialization. Meanwhile, the future of work is an area that's been under constant development and discussion and analysis for a very long time. Except, unfortunately, much of that effort has been spent from a perspective of logic and analysis and deduction. Because that's what business does naturally, right? It's designed to do that. Except, in this world, that is not enough. Do you know this acronym?
Volatility.
Yeah, yes, exactly. In this world, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and really fucking ambiguous, analysis and deduction are not enough. We need to lean more on the powers of induction, of imagination, of creative exploration. And we need to learn these things fast. So we need to learn together, with and from each other. Kids do that naturally, right? We need to be more like kids. And I ask you, who are the people from whom we can best learn about imagination and creative exploration? Yes. Right again, artists, musicians, performers. We've seen these diagrams, this is a stock photo, right? In fact, this is a stock photo created by Stable Diffusion, right? Someone using Stable Diffusion. Right? In fact, half of my illustrations in the presentation are, but don't tell anybody. We can assume that we'll be using AI within a few short years, like we use other tech. Seamlessly and without really giving it much of a thought, perhaps to our own detriment. But there will be interfaces designed for us to be able to perform specific jobs, and the interfaces will do the interfacing between us and the AI. Now, AI will no doubt compress the time it takes to succeed, but it is also likely to compress the time it takes to fail. It's an oversimplification, but given the general level of concern out there, we might be excused for thinking that what is required of us is to be even more mercenary and even more competitive and even more of one of these guys, right? Which may work for a few, like it has done thus far. But I suspect for the many, the way to figure out how to operate in this new world of ours is to work together. Not against pervasive technology, but to see new potential ways in which we can work with it. Ways which we cannot see just yet, importantly. So we need to learn to play jazz with our lives. We need to learn how to improvise on the spot. Mr. DokuTech, ladies and gentlemen. There's plenty of research that states clearly that merely being consciously exposed to art being made kicks up the creativity quotient in people. Now, what if, instead of giving them another creative thinking workshop, you actually gave these people an opportunity to interact with real artists doing real art over extended periods of time? What if you took a working artist and installed him or her right in the living tissue of a company? The office, the warehouse, the factory floor. That's precisely what we're doing with art in a place of work. Why? Well, because it's been demonstrated for a very, very long time, decades, that exposure to art stimulates people's thinking by getting them to walk down different neural paths. It's good for your brain. This is not exactly a new idea. I'm not reinventing anything here. It's been done before. So my question is, why is this type of engagement not becoming standard practice for forward-thinking companies everywhere, not just in Silicon Valley? How's the rope passing? We're good? This little experiment actually helps in one very particular and important aspect of connecting, and that's courage. It takes courage to walk up to another person and start to chat if you don't know them. By virtue of hanging on to this rope, the rope of the network, you have all become my ropies. You are my good rope people. And the thing is, by being members of the Ropey Club, you are automatically empowered to talk to any other ropey about anything at all, provided that it's a real, authentic, and human conversation. Right? You are trying to get under the skin of that person. Right, ropies? Happy with that? Good. Now, can I have one ropey, not someone I know? One ropey, stand up, please. Okay, very brave. Thank you. You are now the keeper and the sharer of the rope. It's a very important job, so pay attention. Please hand this person a sharp implement. Now, your job, keeper and sharer of the rope. No, don't start cutting, overzealous. Is to gather all the ropies at the end of this session. Yes, you will have to hang on to the rope for a little longer. Gather all the ropies, and then cut the rope into lengths, so each ropey ends up with a piece of it. Right? Now, good. Now, if you can tie a fancy knot, you can all do so. Or you can just fold it up, put it in your top pocket, or like make a bow tie out of it. Bow tie, right? Point is, it needs to be visible. Because you see, tonight, we shall convene all of the ropies together. And it'll be then that we will find out why the network of the rope is a good and valuable thing, and why all these random ropies should be talking to all these other ropies. Right now, we don't know. We can't. And that's exciting. It's exciting because we will find out. And it may take us some really cool places. Because there's not a lot that I love in my work more than structured, unstructured discovery. What does that mean? You're not looking for something, you're just looking until you start to get the idea of what it is that you should be looking for, and then you work with that. And that is the nature of discovery. That's how it happens, right? You don't know what you're looking for. Much like a musician who sits down to write a new tune, he has the same notes available to him as are available to everybody else. So he's just doodling, trying to find the new thing. Yet again, artists point the way. And in fact, there's one aspect of art and artists that I think is key. And it doesn't get talked about often enough. While I think it is an absolutely fundamental thing to the value of art and artists in this time and throughout time. Because you see, artists answer in the affirmative. Of course I will. When we ask, take me where I haven't been. And that, my friends, is exactly where all of us are going. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jim.
Thank you. Thank you.